Welcome back to our third and final segment of this program. From beginning, I've been saying that we have a very special guest among us, next to me in our panel guest, who is a specialist for personal bankruptcy. She is insolvency practitioner. She has been working for many years in this field. So she's the right person to give all the questions even I have to ask her. And if you have got any question, you're watching this program at home or from anywhere else, you can ring this live television program and we'll try to give answer. She will give any answer, any questions you ask. So let's be introduced with our special guest, Cecilia Laird. Okay.
Well done.
I remember that.
You certainly did this time, yes.
All right, okay. Welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me.
The last
again.
program we really enjoyed. We got a
good.
very good feedback from our viewers. It was very helpful, very informative, the information you've given. So we kept the longest segment for you now.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
welcome back to our program, okay,
Thank you.
Cecilia. So I know what you do as a profession, and you have been, last program advising on company liquidation. Okay?
Yes.
But this one is we are talking about personal bankruptcy.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you do in your professional life about personal bankruptcy? What is your role as a person?
Okay, well, basically, my role that I do is I help people get out of debt. That's the bottom fundamental line of what I do.
Okay.
Whether it be a director or an individual who's coming to us and they're obviously in a financially distressed state, and that's what I do. I help them.
It's a kind of social work, sound like.
It is kind of. Sometimes you sit and you have to listen to all of their problems, and that's what we do. But instead of just listening to their problems, we actually have a solution. We come up with a solution. As long as they're open and they give us all the information that we require, then we can get going with that, That's what I do.
Okay, that's good. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this since 2001, so I've been in this business.
2001?
Yeah. September, funny enough.
You don't look that old.
I hear that a lot. It's good lighting, that's what it is.
Good lighting, okay. That's good, okay. Of course, we have got a few questions from the audience. So let's go to the audience guest.
Good afternoon, Cecilia.
Oh, good afternoon.
My question is, what is the definition of insolvency?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so the definition is, it's very simple. It's the inability to pay your debts as and when they fall due. Okay, so if not just the fact that someone sent you a red letter, say your telephone company or your mortgage company, because you've fallen behind a little bit, it's the ability of not being able to pay this debt at all. That's the definition, basically, in a nutshell.
Okay, and if I ask you to elaborate a little bit about insolvency, how do you assess and all these things? If you
okay, well, we do the balance sheet test, which is we weigh up the assets of the person versus the liabilities. Okay.
So somebody comes to you and said that I think I'm insolvent.
Yeah.
Do you explain to that what is insolvency, and then you do the test?
Yeah, they kind of already know that they cannot pay this debt, but what we have to do is go through a thorough examination almost of what money can they pay, what salary they're getting as an income, have they got a pension, have they got anything, what is money, what can be turned into cash, what can be liquidated very easily, versus what are the liabilities. And their liabilities are normally their creditors, and the creditors are all the bills that come in on a day-to-day basis, or it may be one big massive fine that they've got to pay. Well, not necessarily a fine, because it would fall probably outside of a bankruptcy, but any other sort of debt that they just cannot pay physically, and they know they can't pay, and it's obvious to everybody. Especially if they've got lots of different catalogues. For example, catalogue debt is a major one at the moment. So you've got lots and lots of catalogues and lots of debts, and people are just struggling, and they know that they need to do something because the income isn't enough now. It's not just servicing.
What do you mean by catalogue debt?
As in, when you owe money for a catalogue, okay, they eventually want their money back on a regular basis. But it gets to the point where sometimes you've stretched yourself.
From a catalogue, you mean?
Yeah. A lot of people do that, believe it or not.
Oh, I see.
And you stretch yourself.
I have to check with my wife.
Yeah, she probably does actually. You never know. She might have a secret account somewhere. So they've spread themselves so thinly when it comes to their finances, and it gets to the point, especially with credit card debt as well, where you know you're not just servicing the debt, so you're not just paying back the balance, the £5 or £10 per month. It's now getting into the hundreds, or sometimes into the thousands. And if you haven't got it because your salary, you know how much you're going to get paid at the end of the month, especially if you're on a fixed income, whether you're on benefits or on a salary, you know what you're getting in, and you know that all these debts, including the catalogues, including all the bills, plus your rent, plus food, water, everything, you cannot live. You've got to do something. Okay. And that's where we step in.
So somebody comes and, of course, you assess.
Yeah, we have to do an assessment, yes.
Because a lot of times they might go wrong in their own calculation.
Yes.
So that's why you step in and do the right calculation.
Totally.
Because Rihanna was talking about there are some expenses might be disallowed. They're thinking, okay. Yeah, those things. Some might be even allowed. They didn't understand that. So those things will be done. So did you get a definition? But you can check Oxford Dictionary anyhow, or you can ask Google Mia, and he will give a good answer to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mahbub Murshed. Very good afternoon, and especially I'm going to be asking your special guest, Mrs. or Madam Celia.
Yes.
What is the process of bankruptcy, please?
Okay. Well, there are two processes, because obviously, me as an individual, I could declare myself bankrupt or attempt to go through the process of bankruptcy. Or if somebody owes you money, you could basically get the wheels in motion to make that person bankrupt. Was you aware of that there's two processes? Okay, so if I was to do, say, a debtor's petition, which is basically me making myself bankrupt, I would have to, back in the day, it used to be that you filled out a substantive form. It's actually 30 pages, and it's very, very in-depth. It talks about, again, an assessment of your assets and your liabilities. So it goes through everything. Have you got a pension? And it's the same thing now, but only it's not a paper form. It's now all been done online. So they've all gone, it's completely online. So you go on the link, it's a government link.
If I could interrupt here.
Yeah.
I would very much, a lot of viewers will want to know the contents of that form, online form.
Yeah.
What they
Okay,
ask
so
for
obviously
it.
the obvious things are your name, date of birth, national insurance number. It then sort of opens up and asks you, are you a director of your own company? Are you a sole trader? Do you have employees? What's the NI number for yourself and for the company? It really goes in depth. Have you got a pension? Have you got an endowment policy for your property? Do you own a property? Do you own a vehicle? If you're a sole trader, for example, it also wants to know tools of the trade. Do you have any expensive tools? Because you could have, very expensive items which could be sold, which aren't directly going to benefit you, or they aren't directly linked to the company, to the business that you're running as a sole trader. Or if you're in a partnership, it wants to know, are you in a partnership? And if so, what's the name of the partnership? How is that set up? It asks a lot of in-depth questions. And also it obviously goes onto the liabilities pages, and they want to know the name of the creditor. So is it Barclaycard, the reference number, the address of Barclaycard, and the amount, and also the date of when roughly the date of when you took the card out, just so they've got an idea of how old the debts are. Have you got any gambling debts? It really does go, it's very in-depth, it's very intense. So you need all of your information before you go. Obviously, because it's online, you can save what you've done and go back.
I was going to ask that question. Yeah. So it's not the whole night preparation or something.
No, but if you need help,
stop and start.
Yeah, you can stop and start. Yes. So just to make sure, but it's obviously a good idea to have a professional look over the information that you've submitted, because if you put the wrong information, you could incriminate yourself ridiculously,
Yes.
and that's
And
why we're
could be
here.
penalized severely.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
yes.
So the online submission was done. Then next step?
So the next step is you wait for the official receiver, that's the government agent, to assess whether they think that you are worthy of this this process of the bankruptcy, and then it will happen or it will not happen. It either fails or it gets accepted. I would assume that most times it would be accepted, and then a bankruptcy order would be made on the date that this is accepted.
Mm-hmm.
At that point,
And how that will be informed? By post?
yeah,
or
it would normally
email?
be by post, but probably by email as well, because
Okay.
it is quite new now. It's quite an established way of communicating. If you put, you know, you want to be contacted by email, then it'll be by email.
Okay.
And once the bankruptcy order is made, it's exactly the same as the old process. So the
Okay.
official receiver will write to all of your creditors
Mm-hmm.
and then basically assess how much of your assets and whether it's worth giving it to an insolvency practitioner's firm
Mhm.
or whether keeping it in-house and dealing with the affairs themselves. And it's a similar process with a
Mhm.
creditor's petition, because the person who is actually filing the petition would file the petition, and on the expiry of a statutory demand and they can't pay, then the petition would go into the court would deal with it in exactly the same way and decide whether the person should be declared bankrupt or not, and then the process continues in exactly the same stream.
Like the old one.
Yes, the old
Because
way.
now it's quite simple. It sounds like because I remember many years back, nearly 20 years back, I used to
Years.
take a client
Yeah.
to the court
Mhm.
and apply their filling up a form and
Yeah,
apply their
I've done that
paying
as
the
well.
fee,
Yeah.
and then 1 o'clock returned to the desk to check whether bankruptcy was declared or not.
Yeah.
And after that, taking the client to the receiver's office, official receiver's
Yeah.
office, and then the very short interview, and then they give you another date for full formal interview.
Yeah.
Where you have to explain how this debt's incurred
Mhm.
and what did you use the money for. Even
Yeah.
they asked those
Yeah.
questions, those
Yeah.
things. So the second process is very much same.
It's
the
yeah,
the
it's the
official
same.
receiver will ask
Yeah.
these questions. I think we have got the answer for the process. Yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes the interview can be taking place over the phone. It's not normally. It's starting to become more and more over the phone.
Okay. Of course, we know how this is done. But what's the problems and restrictions of bankruptcy? This is something that, of course, we should learn those
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Well, one of the problems of bankruptcy is that as soon as the bankruptcy order has been made, it is advertised in the London Gazette.
Okay.
So, you know, if your next door neighbour starts seeing that your car's suddenly gone from the driveway and there's a for sale sign's gone up or whatever, or they suspect, or, you know, you've got creditors people that you owe money to, they can do a check and see, yep, it is exactly what I think it is. He's been made bankrupt, and they can check, and it's very, very easy to check.
Okay.
Yeah.
This
Name
is
and
one of the
shame, we
problems.
could
It is a name and a shame kind of,
Yeah.
it is quite easy. Google can easily, you know, produce this information. Anybody could just look on their phone and check.
Okay.
You know, that's where the embarrassment sort of comes in.
Okay.
There is a stigma. We call it a stigma.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the other restrictions?
Of bankruptcy, depending on your role, your job. So I think you mentioned it earlier in the show, but basically, if you are of a professional body, so an insolvency practitioner, a judge, a doctor, an accountant, any sort of professional field similar to those sort of roles, your governing body will strip you of your title, and it will impinge on the way that you can work.
Okay.
So then your employer has to get involved often, and then you could actually lose your job.
Okay.
So for example, if you're a contractor and the reason why you're sitting in the job you're sitting in is because you're ACCA qualified or SEMA or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, you could lose your job. It is serious to go down the bankruptcy route. But obviously, you know, if you're a shopkeeper or something, you know, just a regular job, then it's, you know, the restrictions may not affect you as severely as somebody in a more professional profession.
What about if somebody owns a property?
Okay, well, if they own a property, if they own it solely, then it's quite simple for the official receiver or the trustee to deal with the asset. But if it's jointly owned, or if there's more than one person who owns that property, then that other person has to be contacted, because eventually the trustee, or it could be the official reason, which is the same person, will want this share of that equity from the property. And it can be quite life-changing.
So it could be damaging to the marriage as well, probably.
Yeah, I mean, part of what we do is almost like marriage guidance counselling, because we have to damage control, especially if the other person, it's normally, not normally, but often it's the wife who isn't the bankrupt, it's normally the husband, and if he hasn't told her or told her all the implications of going down that route, it can be detrimental to their relationship. And often, like I said, when I first started Insolvency, when I first heard the first person say, oh, my wife's going to divorce me, we kind of, the cynic in me kind of kicked in, and I was like, yeah, right. But after a while, you kind of keep hearing the same thing, because it really does, the lack of money and finances and arguing over money and the lack, it really does affect relationships. It's one of the killers, isn't it, of most relationships.
Okay, that's very interesting, because that's why in any relationship should be transparent.
It should be transparent, based on honesty, yes. And to find out one day when you get a letter through the post that you may have your house repossessed, that's not really, you know, being open with your partner, is it? And the children as well can suffer, because they may have to move schools and move location and go somewhere else, and that's not fair, uprooting the whole family.
Okay. How the business could be affected? Businesses
can be easily affected, because if he is a sole trader, we need to know how much of their income is coming in. If they've got employees, it could affect the employees. If eventually, you know, he can't trade because, you know, for whatever reason, because the debts are just piling up. Because if you're a sole trader, as you know, the debts are personally, you're on the hook for those debts. So if he can no longer trade doing what he's doing, he may have to go and seek employment. So there could be a period where he's unemployed or she's unemployed. But if you're a director, once the moment that a bankruptcy petition is filed and you're declared bankrupt, you cannot, without court's permission, be a director of a limited company. And not a lot of people really grasp that, because it's a criminal offence to actually be a director without permission.
Very good example you gave, because last time I was talking to you about that snapshot. If you could, because viewers, they will enjoy that, because I'm sure, you know, Polaroid camera.
Okay. How I explain concepts to my clients, potential clients, is that I take, if you imagine bankruptcy being like a Polaroid picture that you've just taken a snapshot of, and all your assets and all your liabilities are in that snapshot. So on the date that you were made bankrupt, that's when the Polaroid picture was taken. So all the assets that you had and the date that you were made bankrupt, so that's your house, your pension, your endowment policy, everything, all your shares, if you've got any, everything. And all the debts that you had accumulated up to that point, even any pending court cases and the outcome, and you kind of know that you're going to lose, anything like that, that
will come in the
that all comes in the picture. That all comes into the bankruptcy estate, it's called. And once it's in the bankruptcy estate, it solidifies. So that's what the person is dealing with. And that's why when we were talking about this particular snapshot idea, is because often, and when the bankruptcy period used to be longer than 12 months, especially when it was 3 years, sorry, it's 12 months now, but it used to be 3 years. What used to happen was a lot of people, or a small number, would actually be declared bankrupt again. So you can be bankrupt in the same period. It is quite possible. And then again, on the date that you're bankrupt for the second time, again, if you take the picture again, so it's all the new debts and all the new assets that they've acquired from the date that they were made bankrupt to the present date, when that picture and that bankruptcy state, the second bankruptcy state, was taken.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Right. In our program, we have already spoken about IVA.
Yes.
Somebody is in debts.
Yes.
Okay. He has got numerous debts. He's not sure whether he should go for IVA or bankruptcy. So, it's very important. This is somebody to decide whether should go for IVA or bankruptcy. The pros and cons of IVA first, then I'll come to the bankruptcy pros and cons.
Okay, well, if they're going to decide, well, first of all, what normally happens is they give us the scenario of the situation, the final situation that they're in. And we will say to them, okay, these are the pros and cons of an IVA, and these are the pros and cons of a bankruptcy. The pros of an IVA are, if you're in an IVA, it does affect your credit file still, but your credit file is already affected because the likelihood is
default.
Yeah, you've got defaults all over the place. You're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months in arrears, and you can see the numbers on your credit file, and it's shocking anyway. And your score's really low, so no one will give you fresh money. So the credit file issue is really neither here nor there. Again, stigma. One of the things when I refer to stigma, I'm talking about, is it advertised? Well, no, it's not. It's on a government website, which unless you know the link, you're never going to find it. So no one's going to be looking on their phone to see.
Nobody will know if
not
you
nobody.
Go for IVD.
Your regular Joe, your next door neighbour isn't going to know which link, how to get to that information.
You
Trust
should get rid of that nosy neighbour.
Yeah, the nosy neighbour that you've been competing with all these years isn't going to find out. Okay, so it's not advertised, and you don't have that embarrassment, that shame that someone could just literally get on their phone and Google your name, and your name pops up and it says bankrupt and your court reference and all that sort of stuff, which can be a little bit, it's disheartening, isn't it? It's a bit.
This is the pros and cons of IVA. What about bankruptcy pros and cons?
Well, let me just still stay on the IVAs, because with an IVA, for example, you can decide when you put the proposal together, because it's your proposal, okay? You decide whether you wish to include an asset or exclude, and I think that's the vital key, the difference between bankruptcies and IVAs. Because in a bankruptcy, you have no rights to your assets. The trustee takes over all of your assets and all of your liabilities, all of your affairs. You're almost reduced to being a child again. It's that kind of scenario. You don't have, it's not yours anymore. If you want it, you have to buy the interest of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if you want the car that you're driving, the Ferrari that you take that's taking you to work, you have to pay for it at market rate. But with an IVA, you could decide that I don't want to put my Ferrari in, I want to keep driving it and enjoy the pleasure of my car. But the rest of your assets have to go in, and you have to justify to your creditors why the Ferrari or whatever car shouldn't be in your proposal. So that's one of the pros and cons of what else? You've also got to pay, if you've got an income, say a regular income, you have to make a regular contribution. But again, with an IVA, you don't. You can make the decision, but there has to be some sort of lump sum, some sort of financial compensation as to why your income, your surplus income, isn't going into the proposal. Whereas with the bankruptcy, once the official receiver has seen that you've got over £50 worth of surplus income, after your basic allowance of your basic living costs, the rest has to go in. Right.
We're almost end of this segment.
So
how time
that was
flies.
quick.
Just quick. When you talk, time flies.
I know.
To be honest, you understand this really accountancy, taxation, and business advice program. We are accountants, so we are giving this advice to our community. What do you think that what's the role of an accountant in terms of bankruptcy from your point of view?
Okay, I think the role of the accountant is very important, especially if the person is if he's a sole trader, or he's in a partnership, or if he's a director of a company, because those sorts of people, they need to have their accounts in order when they're presenting themselves as bankrupt, because otherwise it could be the case of HMRC, because HMRC have filed thousands of petitions. They do it every single year, and a lot of the time it's because the person's finances are in a mess. If they'd have gone to an accountant, especially at the stage when the petition's been filed and they know, they can actually fight the petition, and often the accountant is the person that would actually help fight the petition on their behalf, and can get them out of the bankruptcy situation.
So we can work hand in hand.
Definitely. There's definitely a partnership there.
It was really nice having you.
Yeah.
I'm sure that a lot of viewers got a lot of answers to the questions they didn't even ask you.
I hope so.
I hope so. Even I'm sure that I learned a lot of things from you. Thank you so much for coming to this program.
Thank you for inviting me.
We are end of this program, to be honest, and before I say goodbye, আমাদের পরবর্তী প্রোগ্রামের সম্পর্কে একটু বলা উচিত। আমরা এখানে একটা সাব কমিউনিটি গড়ে উঠেছে আমাদের ইংল্যান্ড এবং ওয়েলস এবং স্কটল্যান্ড যেখানে বলেন, সেটা হচ্ছে ইউরোপ থেকে আসা অনেক বাঙালি এখানে সেটেল হয়ে গেছেন এবং তাদের বিভিন্ন ধরনের অ্যাকাউন্টিং, বিজনেস এবং বেনিফিট রিলেটেড অনেক প্রবলেম, অনেক কোশ্চেন আসতেছে, যেগুলো আমরা আসলে কমিউনিটিতে এরকম একটা প্রোগ্রাম করলে তাদের জন্য দুই একটা প্রোগ্রাম উৎসর্গ করতেই হয়। এবং আমি মনে করি আমরা এরকম একটা প্রোগ্রাম আমাদের নেক্সট মাসের 26 তারিখে হবে, এবং আপনারা যারা যদি ইউরোপ থেকে নাও এসে থাকেন তবুও প্রোগ্রামটা দেখবেন, কারণ এটা কমিউনিটির ব্যাপার, কমিউনিটির সব কিছুই এখানে আলোচনা হবে। সেই প্রোগ্রামে আপনারা দেখবেন, সেই প্রোগ্রাম দেখে আমন্ত্রণ জানিয়ে আজকের মতো এখানে বিদায় নিচ্ছি। খোদা হাফেজ।
Thank you. Thanks a lot.